The town of Maplewood had always been the kind of place strangers envied. Streets lined with towering oaks created a canopy of green in spring and gold in autumn. Children's laughter echoed from the playgrounds, and the smell of fresh pies drifted from the small-town bakery. To an outsider, it looked perfect. To Chief Harold Mason, it was almost too perfect. He had spent 32 years in law enforcement, 20 of them in Maplewood. He knew every resident by name, every corner of the town, every whispered rumor, and for 32 years he had never had a case that truly shook him. No homicides, no serious crimes, nothing that could blemish the town's wholesome reputation. But there were whispers, the kind that hid behind polite smiles at the corner diner. A missing dog here, a suspicious fire there, doors left unlocked but things gone missing. Small anomalies, nothing worth the worry of a seasoned police chief, yet a nagging feeling had begun to creep into Mason's mind in recent weeks, a subtle unease he couldn't explain. It was on a crisp Monday morning that the illusion of calm shattered. The first person to notice was Connor Hayes, a high school track athlete who ran the same loop around the outskirts of town every day. On this particular morning, Connor had veered off the familiar path, curious about an abandoned property hidden by overgrown hedges and a rusted iron gate. It had always been there, a house left to decay silently for decades. But today, something drew him closer, a faint, metallic scent in the air. Pushing aside the weeds, Connor stumbled over a root and landed roughly on the ground. That's when he saw it, an old basement door, half hidden beneath fallen leaves, its hinges loose, a dark void yawning beneath the cracked wood. Curiosity overtook caution, and with a cautious push, the door creaked open, revealing a staircase that descended into darkness. Connor's phone trembled in his hands as he called the police. Mason arrived minutes later, his breath visible in the cold morning air. He had seen abandoned houses before, but something about this one felt different. There was a stillness that pressed against the ears, a weight that seemed to emanate from the house itself. With gloves and flashlight in hand, Mason descended the stairs first. The basement was small, cramped, and thick with dust, but that wasn't what made him freeze. At the far corner, half hidden by shadows, were blood-stained furniture and what appeared to be a hastily constructed wall, almost like it had been put up to hide something. Against it leaned a stack of crumpled journals and photographs, each marked with dates spanning decades. Mason's heart pounded. He had never seen anything like it in Maplewood. The quiet town that prided itself on safety had a dark corner hidden in plain sight. He quickly secured the area and called for backup, knowing that this discovery could turn into something much bigger than anyone had anticipated. By the time the first team of officers arrived, the news had already begun to spread. Rumors circulated like wildfire. Some whispered that it was a murder scene, others that it was connected to the series of unexplained disappearances from the past 20 years. Mason knew better than to rely on gossip, but the fear in people's eyes told him one thing: the peaceful veneer of Maplewood had been shattered. Among the items in the hidden room was a photograph that caught Mason's attention. It was old, faded, and showed a group of town residents standing in front of the library. But there was something unnerving about it. One of the faces was circled, someone still active in the town today. Mason's mind raced. Could the killer be someone the town trusted? Someone who had lived among them for decades without suspicion? The thought sent a chill down his spine. The investigation began immediately. Mason and his officers combed through the house, collecting every scrap of evidence. Forensics arrived, cataloging bloodstains, fingerprints, and even hair samples. The journals provided clues that hinted at a pattern. Decades of secrets, carefully hidden and meticulously recorded. Every entry told of strange occurrences, missing people, and quiet threats. Whoever had written these journals knew the town inside and out. Meanwhile, the town itself began to stir with unease. At the local diner, conversations quieted when someone mentioned the abandoned house. Shopkeepers glanced nervously at each other. Parents clutched their children's hands a little tighter. Maplewood's calm streets now felt suffocating, as though the shadows had grown longer and more dangerous overnight. Elena Pierce, a young journalist known for uncovering small-town scandals, had caught wind of the story. By late afternoon, she was already photographing the house and jotting notes. She had a sense, almost instinctively, that Maplewood's serene exterior was hiding something far more sinister. Mason met her in the police station, wary but recognizing her talent. "You don't understand, Miss Pierce. Maplewood isn't a city with organized crime. It's quiet. We don't see this kind of horror here." Elena looked him squarely in the eye. "That's exactly why it's dangerous, Chief. The quietest towns often hide the loudest secrets." As night fell, Mason returned to the abandoned house alone, flashlights sweeping across the cracked walls and broken furniture. He traced the lines of the hidden wall, feeling the rough wood under his gloved fingers. There was an odd sense of intimacy in the place, as if someone had lived here recently, observing the town, waiting for the perfect moment. And then he noticed it, a small, folded piece of paper tucked behind a loose brick. Unfolding it, Mason read the words scrawled in a careful, deliberate hand. "You shouldn't have come here. Some secrets aren't meant to be uncovered." A shiver ran down his spine. The quiet town of Maplewood was no longer a haven of peace. It had a heartbeat, a dark, deliberate, and dangerous one. And for Mason, the realization hit like a hammer. The killer was still out there watching, and they knew he had found the secret. As he exited the house, the wind whispered through the overgrown hedges, carrying a faint, almost mocking sound. It was the sound of a town that had pretended to sleep for decades, now awakening with a secret louder than anyone could have imagined. Mason knew the real challenge was just beginning. Maplewood's quiet streets would no longer protect them. Every familiar face could hide a threat. Every neighbor could be a suspect, and the secret, buried for so long, was about to scream. The Maplewood Library had always been a symbol of the town's pride, towering shelves of books, quiet reading nooks, and the soft rustle of pages turning. But on that fateful night, it had transformed into a scene of unease. Broken glass littered the floor, chairs were overturned, and the scent of old paper mingled with something more sinister, the unmistakable tang of fear and blood. Police Chief Harold Mason arrived first, accompanied by Officer Denise Carter. Flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing the magnitude of the disruption. Mason's eyes scanned the room, and he immediately spotted something that made his stomach tighten. Books pulled from the shelves in a deliberate pattern, forming a circle around a single overturned desk. "Looks like someone wanted to send a message," Carter muttered, voice low. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her flashlight steady. Mason nodded. "Or lure us into something." He crouched by the desk and discovered a single item that made his heart race, a photograph of the abandoned house from that morning, the hidden room in plain view, and a handwritten note pinned beneath it. The note read, "Curiosity has consequences. Stop now or lose more than peace." It was a warning, deliberate and chilling. Whoever had left it knew they were being watched and wanted Mason to understand that the game had just begun. By dawn, the town was buzzing with fear. Residents who had shrugged off the abandoned house story the day before now locked doors, double-checked windows, and whispered anxiously to neighbors. Social media lit up with speculation. Old theories about the town's past were resurfacing, and everyone seemed to be looking over their shoulder. Mason realized he needed help beyond the limits of Maplewood PD. He contacted Detective Raymond Hawk, a criminal profiler from the state capitol known for unraveling cold cases and psychological webs of killers who hid in plain sight. Hawk arrived by mid-afternoon, a tall, sharp-eyed man who seemed almost too calm for the tension simmering in the town. "The pattern here isn't just random," Hawk said after reviewing the photographs and journals from the abandoned house. "This isn't a crime of opportunity. This is meticulous, planned, and someone is leveraging the town's quiet reputation to operate unnoticed. Whoever did this knows the community intimately." Meanwhile, journalist Elena Pierce had begun her own investigation. She scoured old newspapers, public records, and police files, piecing together a history of unexplained disappearances and missing people stretching back decades. Each case seemed minor on its own, someone vanishing for a night, a teenager missing without a trace, but patterns emerged when she plotted dates and locations on a map. Mason and Hawk decided to interview town leaders, starting with Mayor Sylvia Kent. In her office, filled with framed accolades and photographs of smiling townspeople, she feigned shock at the news, but Mason noticed a subtle stiffness in her posture. Hawk's gaze lingered on her, reading more in the pause between words than in her speech. "Do you know anyone who might have a grudge against the town?" Mason asked. Kent hesitated. "Maplewood has had its disputes, yes, but nothing violent. You must understand, Chief, this town has always prided itself on civility." Hawk scribbled notes. "Civility doesn't prevent violence, it hides it." As the investigation progressed, Mason received another jolt. A local resident, an elderly man named Walter Briggs, came forward with a memory he had kept to himself for over 20 years. He spoke of a girl, Amelia Turner, who had disappeared without explanation decades earlier. Her case had gone cold, written off as a runaway. But Walter's recollection suggested something far more deliberate, that Amelia had been targeted because she knew something someone didn't want exposed. Elena, armed with the names of prominent families connected to Amelia, discovered a web of secrets that spanned generations. Wealthy families, the library, even the church archives were intertwined with missing records, hidden journals, and anonymous letters that hinted at unspoken agreements. The quiet town had been hiding its darkest acts for decades. Tension in the town escalated. Anonymous notes appeared at homes, warning families to stay out of the investigation. A local shop owner, known for his gossip, suddenly vanished for a day, only to return shaken and silent. Every familiar face now seemed capable of deceit. Maplewood's calm streets were alive with suspicion, whispers, and fear. One night, Mason and Hawk returned to the abandoned house following a new clue discovered in the library, a journal entry referencing a safe observation point overlooking the town, where someone had watched events unfold for years. The journal was signed with the initials LC. This person isn't just committing crimes, they're orchestrating a theater of control. They're watching, waiting, and manipulating events for decades. They know our routines, and they know we're here. Mason's jaw tightened. Then every move we make now could tip them off. We're not just solving a crime, we're walking into their trap. The following day, the town experienced an event that sent shockwaves through the community. During a routine meeting at the town hall, the lights flickered and went out completely. Panic erupted. In the confusion, a shadowy figure slipped past the crowd, leaving behind a single card on the podium. Mason retrieved it, hands shaking. Some secrets demand attention. Some secrets demand obedience. Watch closer. The next revelation will be louder than you can imagine. By now, Mason understood the stakes. The killer wasn't just anyone. They were someone Maplewood trusted, someone invisible until they chose to strike. The quiet town's perfect image had been a carefully maintained illusion, hiding a predator who had spent decades waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Elena's investigation uncovered a final piece of the puzzle for that night, a series of old photographs showing the abandoned house, the library, and the church, all marked with cryptic symbols. The images were decades old, some dated as far back as the 1970s. Mason stared at them, mind racing. Whoever had placed them had been planning this for years. They were patient, calculating, and dangerously familiar with Maplewood's every corner. As Part 2 closes, the audience is left with Maplewood teetering on the edge of chaos. The quiet town is no longer safe. Every resident could be hiding a secret. Every shadow could conceal a threat. And Chief Mason, seasoned and vigilant, realizes one chilling truth. The killer isn't just in Maplewood, they are Maplewood, and the quiet town's loudest secret has only just begun to scream. The town of Maplewood had grown restless. Once the streets were filled with the gentle rhythm of daily life. Children riding bikes, neighbors exchanging greetings, and the occasional hum of the diner's old jukebox. Now, silence had taken root, broken only by whispers, nervous footsteps, and the occasional police siren. The quiet town was no longer calm. It was charged with fear. Chief Harold Mason and Detective Raymond Hawk returned to the abandoned house for the third time, flashlight beams cutting through the dusty darkness. Each visit seemed to reveal more than the last, but the mystery remained elusive. Mason ran his fingers over the spines of old journals stacked neatly in a corner, trying to piece together the story of a killer who had been planning and watching for decades. "This person isn't sloppy," Hawk murmured, crouching by a cracked wall. "They've studied the town. They know who will notice, who will hesitate, who will act. Every step we take is calculated in advance." Mason's gut clenched. So we're dealing with someone who's always been here, someone who blends in so perfectly that no one suspects a thing. Meanwhile, Elena Pierce had uncovered a series of hidden surveillance points throughout Maplewood, cleverly disguised in attics, behind paintings, and even inside library books. Someone had been watching the town for decades, not just keeping records, but anticipating events, monitoring reactions, and manipulating outcomes. The first break came when Officer Carter reported an incident at the town's church. Someone had tried to trap the main entrance with a series of wires and trip mechanisms, clearly designed to injure anyone attempting to enter. Luckily, Carter had discovered it before anyone was hurt, but the message was clear. The killer was rising in confidence, bold and unafraid. The investigation expanded, and every familiar face became a potential suspect. Mason and Hawk called in the mayor, Sylvia Kent, the preacher, Father Donovan, and even Miss Lillian Crawford, the town librarian, whose quiet demeanor and meticulous routines had always been considered harmless. Every alibi was scrutinized, every movement tracked. Mason felt the walls closing in. "If the killer knows we're watching, then everything we do could be feeding them," he said. "We can't trust anyone." Elena agreed. "That's why this story is so dangerous. Every lead could be a trap. Every resident could be complicit, willingly or unknowingly." Tension peaked one evening when Mason and Elena followed a new lead to a secluded cabin in the woods, reported by a nervous witness who claimed to have seen a shadowy figure moving crates and boxes late at night. The cabin was overgrown, almost swallowed by the trees. Inside, they found evidence of staged scenes and meticulous planning, with photos of the abandoned house, the library, and the church pinned on a corkboard. Strings connected names, dates, and locations, a map of the town's darkest secrets. "This is someone's personal war room," Hawk whispered, examining the board. "They're playing a game of control, and the whole town is their board." Suddenly, the door creaked. Mason instinctively drew his weapon, but no one was there. The sense of being watched was overwhelming. Elena took a photo of the corkboard and carefully noted every detail, realizing the killer was anticipating the investigation every step of the way. Back in town, paranoia spread like wildfire. Residents looked at each other with suspicion. The baker locked his shop early. Mothers refused to let children play outside, and the streets became eerily deserted. Anonymous notes began appearing again, this time inside homes, warning residents to stay away from the investigation. Some notes were aggressive, others chillingly casual, implying that the writer knew intimate details about everyone in town. During a tense night meeting at the police station, Mason received a call. Another incident, this time at the school. A janitor reported a series of broken locks and papers scattered across the hallways, but nothing was stolen. It was a message. Hawk examined the scene and shook his head. This isn't about theft or vandalism. This is about sending fear, showing the town who holds power. As the pieces came together, Mason realized that the killer wasn't just a criminal. They were a master manipulator, someone who had studied Maplewood for decades, waiting for the perfect moment to assert dominance and ensure compliance. Elena uncovered yet another clue in the library archives, a series of journals written by different town residents over decades, all strangely similar in tone and handwriting. It was possible that the killer had been mentoring or coercing people to maintain the town's secrets, creating a silent network of obedience. The climax of Part 3 came during a stormy night at the town hall. Mason and Hawk had organized a meeting to confront several prominent residents, hoping that direct pressure would force someone to break. Thunder rolled outside, rain pelted the windows, and the air was electric with tension. Suddenly, the lights went out. Panic erupted. In the chaos, a shadow moved across the room, leaving a small folded note on the podium. Mason retrieved it. The words were simple, yet terrifying. "You're close, but the closer you get, the louder the truth will scream. Not everyone will survive the revelation." Every attendee froze. The town's secret had finally made itself known in a direct, threatening message. Everyone realized the killer wasn't just clever, they were actively orchestrating fear. Mason turned to Hawk. "They're here, in the room, or close by. They want us to know they're in control." Hawk's eyes scanned the room. "Yes, and they're patient. They've been planning this for decades. They've waited for the right moment, and now they're ready to strike decisively." Outside, the storm intensified, mirrors of the chaos inside. The town's streets were empty, homes dark, and Maplewood itself seemed to hold its breath. Mason knew the final confrontation was approaching. The killer had been building suspense, testing boundaries, and preparing for the ultimate reveal. Part 3 closes with Mason standing in the empty town hall, holding the note, rain lashing against the windows, and realizing the killer isn't just lurking in Maplewood. They are Maplewood. Every familiar face could hide a threat. Every quiet street could conceal danger, and the loudest secret in town is about to erupt. The storm had not relented. Maplewood streets were slick with rain, reflections of the flickering streetlights shimmering like liquid gold. The town itself felt suspended in time, holding its breath, knowing that the long-hidden secret it had sheltered for decades was about to explode into the open. Chief Harold Mason, Detective Raymond Hawk, and journalist Elena Pierce stood in the town's historic church, the building's high windows casting eerie shadows as the wind howled outside. It was the perfect location, central, symbolic, and deeply tied to Maplewood's history. Hawk had insisted on it. Somewhere sacred would force the killer to confront the gravity of their own acts. The church doors creaked open, though no one entered. Mason's hand hovered over his firearm. "They're here," he whispered, "and they know we're ready." From the shadows, a single figure emerged. Miss Lillian Crawford, the town's quiet librarian, stepped forward, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm raging outside. She was older now, her hair streaked with silver, but her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and calculating. She smiled faintly, almost as if she had expected this confrontation all along. "Miss Crawford," Mason said, his voice firm, "it ends tonight. We know everything. The house, the journals, the threats. This ends now." Crawford's smile widened. "Do you, Chief, or do you only think you know?" She moved slowly, deliberately, walking down the aisle with an air of authority. "Maplewood has been mine for decades. Every secret, every disappearance, every quiet corner, it was all under my watch. And now you've come poking your noses where they don't belong? Curiosity, it always has consequences." Hawk studied her carefully. "You've been controlling everything, haven't you? The disappearances, the threats, the network of fear that kept the town in line?" "Yes," Crawford replied calmly, "and I would do it again. Maplewood's serenity is a lie, a carefully constructed facade, and I am its keeper." Elena, notebook in hand, stepped forward. Why? Why go to such lengths? Why hide behind decades of silence? Crawford's eyes softened slightly, almost with pity. "Because people are dangerous, secrets are dangerous, and the moment someone discovers the truth, they threaten everything I've built. Maplewood is my family, my responsibility. I chose who could live safely and who could not." Mason's pulse quickened. "You killed to protect a secret?" She tilted her head. "Not killed, Chief. Guided, directed, ensured. Every incident, every disappearance was necessary to preserve the town's balance. The moment anyone stepped out of line, they became a threat. I acted to maintain order. And now," she spread her arms, gesturing to the shadows of the church, "you've discovered too much, and for that, you're going to see the full truth." Suddenly, the church's lights flickered and went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. Mason drew his gun. Elena pressed her hands against her ears at the sound of a sudden metallic click. Hawk moved to cover both of them, eyes scanning every shadow. Then, from the darkness, a series of projectors flickered on, casting images on the walls, photos of the abandoned house, the library, past residents of Maplewood, and, shockingly, images of Mason himself, taken without his knowledge during previous visits. Crawford's voice echoed, calm and deliberate, from a hidden speaker. "You see, Chief, every step you take has been anticipated. Every investigation, every questioning, every lead. It was part of the game. And now the final act begins." Mason swallowed hard. "This ends tonight, Lillian. It's over." Crawford smiled faintly. "It's never over until I say it is." Suddenly, from a hidden doorway, several motion-activated mechanisms triggered. Metal shutters fell, blocking the exits, and the church doors clicked shut with ominous precision. The trio was trapped, exactly where Crawford wanted them. Hawk's voice cut through the tension. Remember, she's patient. She's never impulsive. She'll give us an opening, but it will be a test." Crawford stepped into the light, moving gracefully. "Do you understand now? The quiet streets, the smiling neighbors, the seemingly perfect town, it was all a stage, and you've wandered onto it. The secret isn't just mine, it's Maplewood's, and it always will be." Elena's eyes widened as she pieced together the final puzzle. The journals, the surveillance points, the cryptic notes, they all pointed to Crawford. Her calm, unassuming presence as the town librarian had been the perfect cover. No one suspected her. She had been everywhere, watching everyone, orchestrating fear and obedience for decades. Mason's resolve hardened. "You underestimated us," he said, stepping forward. "You've been meticulous, yes, but the law isn't so easily deceived." Crawford's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of irritation, almost admiration. "You have courage, Chief. I'll give you that." She paused, then continued, her voice icy. "But courage alone won't save you. Maplewood belongs to me until the truth is fully revealed, and you will witness it." Before she could move further, Hawk lunged, knocking a small lever Crawford had been adjusting. A trap failed to trigger. Mason used the moment to secure her with handcuffs, finally ending her reign of control. Crawford struggled, but her calm demeanor never faltered. "You've won this round," she said quietly, "but remember, someone else knows. Someone else has always watched, and when I am gone, the game will continue." The church doors unlocked, and the storm outside began to abate. Mason exhaled, realizing the magnitude of what had just happened. Crawford was arrested, but the weight of her decades-long manipulation hung heavily over Maplewood. Elena documented every detail, her note article ready to shake the town to its core. The citizens were stunned, some relieved, some terrified, realizing the quiet town they had trusted for so long had hidden a predator in plain sight. In the weeks that followed, Maplewood began the slow, painful process of rebuilding. Families reconciled with the truth, residents came forward to fill in the gaps Crawford had left, and Mason oversaw the restoration of the town's sense of safety, though it would never feel the same again. And somewhere in the town, someone observed from the shadows, a reminder that even though Crawford was gone, Maplewood's loud secret had echoes that could never be silenced completely. The quiet town had survived, but everyone knew now that even in the calmest places, darkness could be hiding in plain sight.